Last time on Darkcore Frontiers. Having successfully escaped the Orbit 7 space station on a massive supply ship, Nex, a young Zraynian stowaway armed with nothing but his wits and little robot companion DC, are faced with an even more dangerous task. Disable the ship's advanced security systems without detection and explore the mechanical world of the SS Horizon. But just when it seems the stowaway has everything under control, the ship suddenly exits hyperspace near a desolate planet, far from its intended destination. Worse, strange noises echo through the ship. Who or what is on board? Darkcore Frontiers, Season 1, The Stowaway, by Thomas Chase. Episode 3, Flames in the Dark. A green light blinked on above the airlock, throwing a spooky cast across the darkened room. The inner airlock hatch hissed open. Nex jumped behind a transit pod. From the shadows of the chamber, a figure emerged. At first, it looked like a tall man, cloaked in a dark coat, suspended several feet above the ladder at an unnatural angle. Then, rapidly, a series of moving spindles followed him out of the airlock. Faster than humanly possible, the thing crawled halfway up the wall and stopped, its multiple arms fastened between two riveted bulkhead joints. It clung in the green half-light like a spider. He had seen some weird stuff since leaving home, but nothing like this. Its metallic body and long, jointed arms glinted. The airlock light winked out, dipping the room into total blackness. And that was when he realized his headlamp was still on. Oh, glitch. He was basically a glowing target for whatever that thing was. Nex quickly switched it off. Two round red eyes shone on the wall. A second later, they vanished, and the sound of metal skittered across the ceiling, heading directly for the doorway. Nex froze, suddenly feeling like he was standing in a spotlight. The intruder paused. Great. It probably had night vision, maybe even infrared or thermal imaging. Nex held his breath, remaining perfectly still as the two round eyes shone brightly in the dark.
Who's there?
At once, Nex recognized the weird sound of a voice scrambler. He had only heard one a few times in his life, in the seedier byways of the galaxy. A bright red laser light shot through the darkness and flitted around. Nex glanced toward DC. They had to do something. The creature's light scanned the docking bay and the hallways beyond. Its spider-like arms clicked out a rhythm on the cold metal. Nex activated his wristwatch and tapped out a silent command to DC. The little bot zoomed off. A moment later, from several meters up the passage, the darkness lit up with a blinding series of flashes from DC's distress beacon. While the alien was distracted by the light show, Nex slipped deeper into the shadows. Once clear of the docking bay, he sprinted back down toward engineering. A minute later, DC caught up to him. Glancing back, Nex saw nothing but darkness. Who was this creepy spider? Had he brought the convoy out of hyperspace? How? And what did he want aboard a supply vessel? All of these questions swirled through Nex's brain. Out of breath, he reached his quarters, dug out his datapad, and established a link to the SS Horizon central server. Because he had been so brilliant in turning off all the cameras, now Nex couldn't see where this guy was or what he was up to. All he had was the ship's location and status. Nex watched as first, the life support systems turned on everywhere. Then, one by one, all the other ships in the convoy powered down their defenses. That spider thing? It had hacked into the ship's computers and was shutting everything down. This had to be a hijacking. From the gear that thing was using, it was not your average thug. It was an elite-level space pirate. And the worst part? Nex's genius move of turning off the ship's security basically had allowed it to take the fleet free of charge. Nex's first thought was to get out of there. There were lifeboats, and they were near a planet. He could probably sneak away without anyone noticing. Next, switch the central server view to the star map. The nearby planet was called simply R34710. It was a Class E planet, which was a fancy way of saying it had no air, extreme weather, and was basically uninhabitable. But it did have at least one outpost, signified by the O in the name. But there was a voice in Nex's head. Maybe something his father said way back when. He couldn't really remember, but it kept screaming at him. It would be wrong to cut and run. But why? Nex owed NovaCore Industries nothing. Hijackings happened, and those gigantic megacorporations had insurance. One supply fleet? They probably wouldn't even notice. They had mining operations all over the galaxy. And Nex was a thief himself. Why should he stick his neck out? But this ship had allowed him to live. Yes, he was a thief, but he had rules. Don't hurt anyone, only take what he needed to survive, and leave everything clean. No damage, no trace. And what about that mining colony out in the middle of nowhere? They were counting on this convoy. Food, machinery. Without it, they were done. And Nex? He'd be partly to blame for the colony's catastrophic loss. He looked at DC hovering beside him, and it hit him. He was going to stay, at least for a bit. Maybe just a few minutes, but he had to try to fix this mess. If things looked totally hopeless, then yeah, he'd book it or find a place to hide till these hijackers reached wherever they were going. Nex considered his options. He couldn't just go at these guys. He was vastly outnumbered and outmatched. What he needed to do was stay hidden and try to mess up their plans from the shadows. Stop them before they could really dig in.
DC, we need to reactivate the ship's security,
Nex said.
Get back into the mainframe and turn everything back on.
DC's sensors flickered as he processed the command. With a squeak, the bot zipped out of the quarters toward the nearest access panel. Nex watched the display. The bot interfaced with the panel, reconnecting the circuits and re-enabling the security protocols. The lights on the security cameras blinked on, and shrill alarms started going off in every corner of the ship. The calm, automated voice squawked through the intercom system.
Security breach detected.
A series of error delivery failure messages popped up on the SS Horizon's central server. Nex closed them out and brought up camera views, scanning for movement. As he suspected, the spider creature he had encountered in the docking bay was now on the bridge. In the full light, Nex saw he was not a creature, but a man, walking about on two legs. An array of mechanical arms was strapped on his back, which he controlled with a dashboard of levers attached to what looked like a metal arm. He wore a hooded coat and a wide, goggle-eyed mask that gave his obscured face an insect-like appearance. Surprised by the sudden activation of the security alarms, the spider pirate bent over the computer consoles, tapping frantically on the controls. And he was no longer alone. Two dark-cloaked and armored figures moved around him, armed with ISR Iron Surge rifles. Two other fire teams sprinted along the corridors, securing and locking down different areas of the ship. Nex watched the live feed from the security cameras. The doors to the bridge slid open. He barked through his insectoid mask. His two hooded companions moved to flank him, their ISR Iron Surge rifles raised. The spider pirate leapt out of the way as the air distorted from just off screen. Two squat security droids, moving like little fire plugs, rolled into the shot. Their wide, round eyes stared unblinking as their weaponized arms swung around opening rifts that pockmarked the air with tiny matter displacements. Small chunks of metal and plastic disappeared around the flight deck as the rifts snapped shut. One hooded hijacker, caught off guard, went down. The other sprang behind an operations console. A volley of rifts rippled against the droid's phase disruption armor, dispersing the energy across its surface in a cascade of fragmented light. The spider pirate moved with inhuman speed up the side of the wall, and clacking across the observation windows, flanked the combat droids. From his belt, he pulled a pistol and fired a bolt of electricity. It crawled around one of the droids in eruptions of light that flared out the camera lens. A laser beam strobed out of the eye of his goggles through the rising smoke-filled room and sliced into the sensors of the second droid. Both robots slumped over in an upright position, arms still pointed out, as smoke hissed up through their wrist and cervical joints. The ship's corridors, once silent and lifeless, reverberated with the distant echoes of weapon fire. Security droids were popping out of their housings all over the ship. Each droid was fitted out with fractal weapons, non-lethal shock batons, and sonic emitters. The droids' red sensors and AI targeting systems locked onto the hijackers, calculating the most likely openings of their rifts. In Cargo Hold C, a team of cloaked hijackers positioned themselves behind storage containers, creating a crossfire zone in front of their position. Their armor absorbed glancing hits as they returned calculated shots at the droid's sensor arrays and weapon arms. In the medical bay, the second team split into two groups that alternated between laying down suppressing fire and falling back to the next covered position. One pirate rolled out from behind cover and hurled a pulse grenade into the midst of the droids. It detonated with an electrical blast that sent two more robots slamming against a row of instrument trays. From concealed compartments in the walls and ceiling, more security bots emerged. Their sonic emitters filled the air with a piercing screech.
There are too many!
One of the hijackers screamed, throwing his hands over his ears. The door to the medical bay slid shut and the lock snapped. Automated turrets descended from the ceiling, their twin barrels swiveling. Before they could react, the turrets opened fire. The air filled with the sizzle of rift projections. Matter vanished in perfectly circular holes, chewing through equipment and cover. Nax blocked his eyes as the speakers distorted with screams. On the bridge, the spider pirate snarled and opened a ship-wide channel. He tapped on his wrist. A high-pitched signal pulsed through the corridor, scrambling the droid's targeting systems. One of the droids near the back jerked and began firing at random shadows on the walls, its AI struggling to recalibrate. Seizing the diversion, the spider pirate and the surviving member of his party fell back into the corridor. He switched his ISR Iron Surge to fractal burst mode, opening rifts that severed control panels and bulkhead supports, forcing the droids to divert and take cover. He shouted, his mechanical arms already propelling him towards their escape route. Nex gathered his belongings. Looking around, he realized he had lost track of DC. He tapped his wristwatch as he headed across the room, trying to find the nestling bot's current location. He was about to exit his quarters when the door suddenly slid open in front of him. A security droid stood there, its weapons aimed directly at him. Its advanced IFF system initiated a scan.
Intruder detected. Preparing to neutralize.
You've been listening to Darkcore Frontiers. If you enjoyed the story, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Wondrous Legends. And if you like this production, you can help us make Season 2 by supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/wondrouslegends. Thank you for listening.